The Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience. Let's get back to football. Today, I've already released my top 200 rankings for the fantasy football season. You can find that in the description of this video and podcast, as you can with all of the previous fantasy football shows. We did an entire series on running backs, wide receivers, quarterbacks, and tight ends, player by player previews. But now it's time to dig specifically into the positions to talk about the rankings. So, smash the like button to the video. In the comment section, you tell me the player I have the most incorrect in my rankings. And that'd be great. Also, rate and review the Pat Mayo Experience. 5 stars. The entire draft kit is down there as well, along with the rankings list. You can find all of that. Joining me, because he's the best at ranking in the biz, as we like to call it, or any biz. I think they just call it the biz. It's Jake Ciely from theathletic.com. What's going on, my man?
Yeah, that's what's going on. Notice everybody paying attention. He said his rankings, the one that you hate on his the most, not mine. I know there's going to be plenty of hate for mine.
You can just go at All In Kid on Twitter and just be like, your rankings are shit, pal. You just do
well,
that.
the good thing is I found that little Twitter secret where if they're not following you, you don't even see their tweets. So that eliminated a lot of that.
Oh, there you go. So yeah, if you want to get mad at Jake, remember to follow him first, then yell at him on Twitter. What's the athletic giveaway right now?
It's not like really a giveaway. If you go to the bottom of one of my articles, it's 30 days free, or it's 50% off. It's like 40%, 50% off. Right now, it's still 50% off. That's just what you want to go do. Just take advantage of that. So it should be at the bottom of any of my articles.
My good pals, Brad Evans and Jeff Radcliffe, they just launched a new site, Fade the Noise, ftnfantasy.com. They have rankings and tools up there, and they did tell me to tell you, because they were on the Top 200 show, that if you use promo code Mayo over at FTN Fantasy, you can get yourself a discount. So I highly recommend you go check them out. Jeff, in terms of like numbers, one of the best. Brad, kind of like me. Probably don't want to listen to him, but hey, fun content.
When you said you, I thought you were specifically talking to me. Like they wanted me to tell you.
No, you're like, you're a lot like Radcliffe in that you're good at rankings, and Brad's like me, where we're just like we're throwing out takes here.
Just that's what it's fun is for the takes. I did some bets or bet lines with him. You saw the one I mentioned about Minshew. Smashed the over on that one.
I like that one. What was it? 21.5 passing touchdowns?
It's 21, and then I said even if it's 21.5, I would definitely. I think some of them are even at 20.5.
Yeah, it's just one of these situations where it just doesn't seem like, unless Minshew gets hurt, obviously, but
right.
No matter how poorly he plays, like who were they replacing him with? Like he's going to get 16 games. If he can't get to, put it this way, if he can't get to over 21.5 passing touchdowns in 16 games, he's not in the league next year.
Yeah, pretty much. I think the backup is now Mike Glennon, isn't it? I'm double checking. Yeah, they're not turning to Mike Glennon.
Although many teams have turned to Mike Glennon in the past. So secret bald Mike Glennon too. You think that he's like a young man, full head of hair. He takes off that helmet. Nope. He's basically Homer Simpson. Also, my funniest movies of the 2000s bracket, if that's your jam, that's up right now. Voting is open. If you follow me at ThePME on Twitter, you can vote on that. Jake, when you see that tweet come out, you retweet it, all right? And you vote.
I definitely will. What's the number 1 seed?
There's 4 1 seeds. It's a 68 movie bracket. I believe,
oh, wow.
I believe the top 4 are Anchorman. I'm trying to visualize it. Anchorman, Borat, Superbad, and Hangover are the 4 1 seeds.
Yeah, that seems pretty. I think that the only 1 seed I would give of those is Anchorman. Anchorman is definitely going to be in my final 4.
You see, you say that, but it came out a long time ago. Put it that way.
Yeah, I could see a lot of people not having seen it. And then if they only saw the second one, or if they have that one in their back of their minds, the second one definitely didn't live up.
I don't think it's that people haven't seen it. I just think that it got so overquoted over time that it finally, like, it had so many returns on it and rewatchability. And then, like, throughout time, it's kind of gone like this. Like, Step Brothers, at least to me, when people talk about it, seems to be better regarded now, although Anchorman is way better.
And which is weird to me because I've never been that big of a fan of Step Brothers. But so basically what you're saying is it got overquoted 60% of the time every time?
Yeah.
See what he did?
Exactly that. Let's talk running backs. So, top 10 rankings. Here we go. We already did the player-by-player profile, so you can go check that out. McCaffrey, number 1. Number 2, Saquon Barkley, named after your dog, named after Saquon Barkley. Maybe Barkley will make an appearance on the show. Who knows? Zeke Kamara.
Just eating a bone.
Zeke Kamara, Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, Kenyon Drake, Dalvin Cook, Miles Sanders, and Leo Fournette. That's my top 10 this season. Cook, I want to start with. I have him at number 8 right now, and that's only because of this holdout status. And like Mixon, I think is most definitely going to play. I don't know why I feel that way. Maybe I should have him lower too. But like the closer we get to the season and this isn't resolved, the farther down the rankings Dalvin Cook is going to split, because I've just seen too many guys at running back hold out lately that I don't want to draft a guy in the first round that isn't fucking playing.
And I certainly understand it. By the way, you always hate on me for the nicknames. And speaking of Anchorman, can we not, because he plays for them, can we not call him Christian Sex Panther McCaffrey? Does that not work?
Does anyone call him that?
No, exactly. Nobody ever calls him the nicknames you give him. That's the point.
I've never even heard of that one.
I know. We're making it up because he plays for the Panthers, and we were just talking about Anchorman. Sex Panther McCaffrey.
Again, Jake, leave the nicknames to me.
You just, that's what I look. Hey, I tried.
Yeah, I appreciate your efforts on all this stuff, but like, stick to the good rankings. Leave the nicknames to me. That's the only like. We
were talking Anchorman.
You're trying to steal my bit. That's the one thing I can do well. Come up with nicknames for people.
I haven't been able to contribute since Snoo. That's why. That's the only one I have in my back pocket.
Yeah, it was like 5. That was like 5 years ago. Anyway,
I know exactly. All right, so Dalvin Cook. Look, the thing is with him is he's playing, because the problem is even if he holds out and never plays, he's still a restricted free agent, so he doesn't even get to hit free agency. That's the problem. Now, whether it's 4, 6, whatever it might, I don't think he can get to 10. I don't know. I would have to look deeper into that. Like, you know how these things. Nobody ever seems to have an answer. We all had that. What was the one where it was the running back that was going to hold out, and they were saying, oh, he's not going to get free agency, and then all of a sudden we get like day 1. Yeah, and there was like, oh, no, he can hold out. He'll still get free agent. Like, they changed that. Nobody was saying it the entire offseason. This one, we at least know he does have to play, so I'm not moving Cook down too far. Even look at this. Speaking of Bell, you brought up this argument years ago, Pat, and I'm sure you remember it. Is back when Le'Veon Bell had the suspension to start the season. Kept saying I'd still take him potentially number 1 running back, because the replacement running back that you use and then get Bell back is still going to be RB1. So if Cook holds out for September, replacement X plus Cook is still top 5. So I'm still taking Cook as the 4th running back off the board. Obviously, if that changes and he officially says I'm holding out, whatever it might, like 8 games and he can still get free agency, I would move him down. But I'm still okay with him at number 4.
The biggest concern for me this year on any of the holdout guys is just the COVID situation that's going on right now. Is that like, can you get into the team? Like, I don't know exactly how it's going to work for football, if football can actually even happen. But if it does, like, can he get put back into their bubble coming off of a suspension? What's he doing in these other weeks? Like, is he sitting around at home? It's not like he can't go to facilities if he's holding out. Like, there's a lot of question marks around this situation to begin with, because of the weird circumstances that we're going to see with the 2020 season, that adding more on top of it is not a good thing.
I certainly understand that, and we still have time to go for right now. I think that it's all valid points. It kind of feels almost not slippery slope to 100% degree of the definition, but it kind of feels like that. It's like, all right, well, then if we play this game with this guy and this game with this guy, like, well, do we move Zeke up a spot and use the tie break because he's already got COVID? And then, so I'm just kind of right now, I'm treating Cook as in everything in the NFL is normal as it can be. I would still go with him before, but I'm not going to say you're crazy. Like, all your points are valid. If you don't want to take him number 4, I would not have any problem with it.
If Dalvin Cook was a 5th round pick, I wouldn't be concerned about the contract holdout, but I've just seen it happen the past 2 years where these guys actually do hold out. That if I'm going to take him number 4 overall or number 3 overall, like I don't find that there's a discernible difference really. Like, if all things being equal, like, where would I have Cooked rank if I knew that he was for sure playing the season? Well, he'd be with Kamara, Henry, and Mixon. Yeah,
but see, here's the thing, to go back to your COVID point, again, he needs to play to get free agency, unlike the other ones. So if you
Jake,
think about
COVID, you make it seem like NFL players make like really sound decisions all the time.
No. But I was going to bring in another point for him is like, you bring in the COVID. Well, what if he gets it? I'm just throwing this out there. What if he has to play 10 games, which is usually, I think it's 12, 10, somewhere around there, whatever it might be. Let's say he says, oh, I'm going to hold out for 4 weeks, and then he gets COVID and only ends up playing 5 games, and now he's a restricted free agent. Like, I think that might, again, yes, I'm assuming these guys think these things through, or somebody tries to help them. but I'm just saying, like, I don't think that Cook, call me crazy when the season kicks off, but I don't think Cook is holding out.
Okay. And like I said, I just kind of want to wait and see. Like, we're in the middle of July. We have time to fester on this, but the closer we get to the season where a new deal is not done, he is not reported or anything like that, I'm just going to continue to worry about him. Now, let's say that he is all healthy, and even if he returns to the team and then he ends up getting hurt or ends up with COVID and has to sit out, those games would technically count towards his free agency. He doesn't actually need to play on them. He needs to be a member of the active roster.
So that's
different
too.
Yeah, well, it would be like if he had gotten like if he gets hurt week 1, he doesn't lose the season because of free agency.
Well, I've seen some of the different ones where they were saying I guess it depends on. Well, COVID makes sense, but I think it was the ones whether or not you were under the listed high risk people, and then you still chose to sat out, and then that whole it's a mess. Nobody really understands the full story anyway.
Like, all things being equal, let's say he plays, would you take him or Kamara?
I would take Cook.
You would, okay.
100%.
So Cook, 7 games with 20 plus carries last season, plus all the catches, and the Vikings ranked second in run rate in the league at 47.4%. And some of that's going to be Alexander Mattison. And a lot of people are boosting up Mattison up the board. I have Mattison at number 40 right now. He's a handcuff still. Like, one of the points that I made with Jeff and Brad was, like, yeah, he's a high upside handcuff, but he is still a handcuff. Like, I ranked Latavius Murray ahead of him because I know what I'm getting from Latavius Murray, that if Kamara is hurt, Latavius Murray is a top 5 back. And I factor this stuff into my rankings where I bet you over the course of the season, like, Madison's going to score way more points than Latavius Murray. Like, that's not a question because he's going to get his 7 to 10 touches a game, whatever it might be. But you're never in fear of actually playing Latavius Murray unless Kamara is hurt. People are going to draft where he's going right now, Alexander Mattison, in a spot where they think he's a flex guy. He's not a flex guy. He's only a play if Dalvin Cook isn't playing. But where people drafting him right now, that they're going to end up playing him, which they shouldn't.
And that's kind of the situation people fall into a lot of years. I was just on with Marcus Grant yesterday. We were talking about the Miami Dolphins backfield, which I'm sure we're going to get to at some point, but the argument for Breida, yeah, see, I'm with you. I'm 100% Howard with the Breida argument. That's what it is. It's like, well, he's a pass catcher. Okay, that's fine. So what? Does he maybe in a full point PPR become your flex? Because it's similar to Madison. Okay, you get those few touches. At best case scenarios, RB3. You're just hoping Jordan Howard bombs. And that's where, like, but the point is, what you're paying, Breida in some drafts is going in front of Howard. And that's the point. It's like, you're paying this price, which is why I agree with you, is you're paying prices of starter value that you're never going to start. Just wait and take a Latavius Murray, wait and take a Zach Moss, wait and take these guys that you don't pay a price where you can just leave them on your bench until something does potentially happen.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Madison right now, is that where you have to draft him, he is just a guy who's going to lead to massive bench mistakes. And I've downplayed him in the rankings because of that. Like, my rankings don't go off projections. My rankings go off where I would actually draft people next to it. I know that seems crazy to a lot of people. And listen, I don't always have the best rankings. I'm not going to tout myself as someone who's a top 10 overall ranker over the past 10 years like Jake Ciely, because he actually has numbers to back that up. I'm god-awful at this stuff. But the way that I use my rankings, like, do I want this guy or do I want this guy? I want this guy. It's not like, well, in 80% of my projections that he comes out higher on 7 of 10 of them, so he is ranked higher. That's not what this show's fucking about.
I don't do that either.
I know you do. But you know the type of person I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about. That's why I'm laughing.
It's not my fault that the rankings were wrong. My projections gave it a better percent chance. Yeah. Well, fantasy football is about making fucking decisions.
It's funny. Like, I'm picturing two people in my head as you're saying this.
And listen, those guys are better and win more than I do, but, like, it's not helpful when you hear it. Do I want this guy or this guy? You want that guy. Were you wrong? Yeah, I was definitely wrong. But I told you to play.
It's like those, what is it, the 360, whatever the ones are that where they do like the game, and it's like as the game goes, they show you the win opportunity and stuff like that, and then like the chart keeps going up and down, and they show some of the crazy ones where like teams overcame a 16-point deficit in the fourth quarter and like all that. That's the guys you're talking about. It's like, well, that would have happened, but 80% of the time that doesn't happen. So like, yeah, there's projections and then there's going that far, which, hey, that works for a lot of people. It works for a lot of people doing Vegas bets and stuff like that, but that's not my game either.
So you're good with McCaffrey over Barkley, but you agreed that they're 1-2?
I 100% agree they're 1-2. And it would be a bold prediction, but I think that there is an opportunity for Barkley to overtake McCaffrey, mostly because 2 years ago, Barkley actually outscored him on a per game basis. And I'm not saying that McCaffrey can't do what he did last year, because if you use last year's numbers for McCaffrey, he outscores Barkley 2 years ago. I'm just saying that kind of usage that you saw McCaffrey get can be what Barkley had, because that's what Barkley had when he was 100%. And he still put those numbers up last year while basically not 100% for over half the season. So, maybe what's going on in Carolina, maybe they take a little bit of the workload off, and we don't know what Joe Brady and Rule are going to do. They would be crazy not to let him, do what he just did last year. But I'm just saying, it's not out of the realm of possibilities that Barkley finishes number 1, but that's the only reason he's definitively number 2. I would never take him number 1.
Yeah, like if you scale back McCaffrey's numbers 20% from what he scored last season, he would still be the number 1 running back.
Which is crazy.
Only Michael Thomas has more receptions over the past 2 years of any player. He's a running back. That's what makes him the most valuable. So I live in a world where I can see Zeke or Barkley or even Dalvin Cook or potentially even Kamara, if they start giving him 20-plus touches a game, outscore McCaffrey. But if you want the best bet, it's Christian McCaffrey.
That's not even a doubt. To go further into your point, 24 more receptions than second place Austin Eckler, which also had 11 more receptions than third place. So, yeah, 35 more receptions than third place running backs?
Yeah. So McCaffrey, Barkley, Elliott, 1, 2, 3. Then I think that Michael Thomas should be drafted there. You can check out my overall top 200 rankings for that. Then you have Kamara, Derrick Henry, Mixon, Drake, Cook, Sanders, Fournette. I think you can... What?
Fournette.
You hate Fournette? Or you're too low?
Hate Fournette there.
Why?
Because here's why. So I'm going to tell you, I just wrote him up.
Can I bet you Fournette versus Chubb this year?
1,000%.
All right, I'll take Fournette. You take Chubb. I'm scared of Nick Chubb.
And I'm beyond terrified of Leonard Fournette. Here's why. I'll tell you why. Because, and I know you did it on the show when we were Chris Mini. Like, yes, I am that afraid of Chris Thompson for this reason and this reason only. It comes down to style. So Leonard Fournette is a decent pass catcher. I said he's an underrated pass catcher coming out of college, because back at that LSU offensive days, that's actually where Darius Geis came from too. LSU didn't really use the running back in that way. So you look at Fournette. Fournette is not a pass catching running back. He's not a route running running back. He's a dump off with good hands. And if you look at what he did last year, a lot of it was dump off passes, dump off screens, which is fine. It's very valuable for what he did last year. But Chris Thompson steps into that role. And if you just cut off, I wouldn't even say 50% of his targets. I'd say 40, 30%. I actually have him for 30 fewer receptions this year. That's a lot to take off of his plate, where if you also talk about the uses of Armstead, the fact that they're going to be behind, we expect him to pass more. I'm just worried that he doesn't get anywhere near his approaching of 1,700 yards last year, and he falls into like a 1,300 yards. And if a lot of that's lost in the passing game, he's going to have to rebound and touchdowns, and that this team just doesn't seem to project that for me. In a full point PPR and a half point PPR, he's not even inside my top 15.
Well, in his first 2 years in the league, he scored every 29 touches. Last year, he scored every 117 touches.
Yeah, I know.
I don't think he's going to score on every 29 touches, but if he scores on every one of 50 touches, then all of a sudden you go from 3 touchdowns all the way up to like 7 or 8 this season, and that can mitigate some of the stuff that you're talking about in the passing game, where he loses receptions and yardage that way. But I just don't see a scenario where he's not getting 20-plus touches a game regardless.
I actually do. And it comes down to, again, the passing game. If this team is passing a lot, as everybody expects, obviously things go differently every single year. We project teams at the beginning of the year, and by the second half of the season, defenses are much better than we thought they would be, whatever it might be. This is a team that looks like it should be passing plenty. That's Chris Thompson's role. They brought him in for that. Now, of course, Chris Thompson can get hurt, and like this will be looking foolish because, what I was going to say was just 3 months ago, before free agency and the draft, I was on with you. Leonard Fournette was like number 7 or 8 in my rankings because I just said 1,700 yards and 3 touchdowns is not going to happen again. Just like when Julio Jones only scored 3 touchdowns, that was going to come back around. My biggest problem is what I'm saying is even if you take off 20, 25 carries, that's not a lot. You take off 20, 25 carries, you give 40%, like I said, to Chris Thompson in the passing game. And now he's not even getting 300 touches, which that on a week-to-week basis isn't 20 touches per game. That's what I come down to. I could be completely wrong. I just don't see him getting the volume this year, mostly because I think the team is kind of over him.
Yeah, but they could just be running him into the ground too, knowing that they're over them.
Yeah, that's kind of like, I'm not saying you're making it, but that's often a crutch argument that, like, for people that want to support people. Say, oh, they're going to run him into a ground. It's the last season they have him. And I'm not saying I'm not coming after you for saying that, but
yeah, you're just come after me for saying it. I think that's a real thing. I'm not going to lie to you.
It is, but it isn't. Like it's the same thing as a contract year. I went back and looked at like a lot of these, like the contract year. It's a myth. Like people only remember when it happens. It's
you went back and looked at contract year, good or bad. I'm not looking about good or bad performance. I'm just looking about usage.
Right. Same thing. Usage, the same thing. Like, did the usage go up because they were in their contract year? Did their performance go up because it was a contract year? I did. All the numbers were there. It was like 10 years of worth. And basically it was 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. 1/3 of them were exactly the same. 1/3 improved and 1/3 declined. It's the Madden curse. People only remember when it happened.
Yeah, but I'm not looking for his touch rate to go up. I'm just looking for it to stay around the same.
And if it stays the same, I agree with you. I just don't think it is. I actually think he's going to lose a good 10 to 20% of his touches this year.
I mean, but it's weird because that's what happened to Nick Chubb once Kareem Hunt came back. So why do you just overwhelmingly like Chubb versus Fournette?
Because two reasons. So one is he doesn't have as much competition for additional lost touches. That's the difference here. Is like Leonard Fournette additionally is going to lose touches. Nick Chubb still from that point on, as with Kareem Hunt, was an exceptional running back, was an RB1. Kareem Hunt was an RB2. They kind of turned into the Melvin Gordon, Austin Eckler of Cleveland. And we've already heard talk about it is Cleveland doesn't really have a third receiver. They're talking about lining Kareem Hunt on the line of scrimmage like David Johnson did at his prime in Arizona, where Nick Chubb is, you brought up Joe Mixon before. I think Nick Chubb and Joe Mixon are similar in this regard, is that they're so good on a per reception basis is they're not the same as like Leonard Fournette. This is a great example between the two. Leonard Fournette needs 4 or 5 receptions to do what Nick Chubb and Joe Mixon do on 2 or 3. And so I'm not worried about Nick Chubb because that's his ball game. That's his backfield. He's going to be out there. He's going to be used at the goal line like Leonard Fournette, but he's just better in the passing game where he doesn't need as much to do what Fournette did. So that's where it comes down to, is that if you gave me Nick Chubb and Leonard Fournette, both, to your point, losing what Nick Chubb did last year, Nick Chubb is going to outperform Leonard Fournette by team performance and by talent.
I would agree with you, but I guess the distinction between me of having Fournette over Chubb would be I know Nick Chubb has already lost those touches. I don't know if Fournette's lost them.
And see, that's where I go the other way.
But you don't know.
I know. No,
You're not from the future, Jay. I hate to tell you.
I know. I wish I was. I could like find out what the hell went wrong with my love life. If you could tell me, like, if the thing is like, look, I'm going the other way and saying Nick Chubb's already lost them. He has the potential to get some of it back by their talk of the use of Kareem Hunt at the same time. So, sorry, I thought Barkley was getting ready to pee on the floor. Leonard Fournette, I think, loses it, and that's why. It's like, again, I think Chubb has room to improve what we saw when Kareem Hunt was back. I think Leonard Fournette is fully going downhill. That's all.
Mixon and Drake. Do you think I have them too highly? I know Drake's sort of combustible, but I want pieces of the Arizona offense, and I don't know if I want any of the receivers. I know people love Hopkins. I'm not super in on Hopkins. When we talk about receivers, we'll hear about that. Not that he's not good, but he's not like top 3 good to me. But I think Drake is where you want to be. And I'll probably draft Edmonds late just to make sure that I have the backup as well. Because if he ends up being the guy and getting all the touches, if anything happens to Drake, he's going to be super valuable.
So I actually have Kenyon Drake as an RB1. I have 0 shares of Kenyon Drake so far. My biggest concern about him is, even if you only take the games when he was with the Cardinals, is that those 3 big games that he had were almost 60% of his production for the entire season. And I'm not saying that can't improve and flatten. And when I say improve, I don't think it can do better than that, obviously, with that 3 touchdown game. But those numbers can flatten across the season and bring in consistency. It's just, what is Drake? Like, is this the Lamar Miller situation where we kept saying, give the guy more talent or touches because he's talented, give him more touches, give him more touches. And then we see Lamar Miller used over an entire season, around that 20 touch per game, and he's producing the same, but at a less efficient rate. That's my concern with Drake. So I think he could easily finish as an RB1 with this team, with this offense, with Cliff Kingsbury and all that type of stuff. But what if they're super pass happy and Kenyon Drake isn't used so much in that area because they have Hopkins and all the weapons there? There's just a lot that can go wrong with Drake, let alone the talent of Chase Edmonds, whether or not he's been healthy, but Chase Edmonds behind him. And just the back is with, I think, Eno Benjamin. Yeah, was it Eno Benjamin that they took? I'm having a brain fart now. But in any case, if you look at what's behind them, they have some options. I'm just scared of Drake there. Mixon, I think, is in the perfect spot. I think go back to the Nick Chubb thing. People hate on Mixon too much for only, and I put that in quotes, only catching two catches a game.
Derrick Henry just signed his extension, by the way. He's working to
really?
He's working to finalize his deal. I guess the thought process behind it is if they can sign him now, they might have money to go after Clowney. By the time people watch this, 2 days after we recorded it, he probably has signed the deal. But either way, like he's just another guy that I'm not going to have, almost like you have Drake, like where he's ranked. I'm probably not going to end up with Derrick Henry, only because I have Devontae Adams ranked above him in my overall rankings. I would rather have Devontae Adams. That I think Henry and Kamara are a bit closer to Drake, Cook, Sanders, and like that range than like the top two receivers, who I think are distinguished above the rest of the pack. And with Drake, I agree he's volatile. I agree he could go busto. But he's just a guy I'm in on this year. I love what this offense presents, the pace that they can play. And when you start stretching teams out vertically and you have a mobile quarterback, it just makes everything so much easier on the running back that he might not need to touch the ball over 20 times a game. They can use him in an efficient manner. I mean, he had the 5th most fantasy points per touch of any running back last year. I think that this is a perfect offense for him.
Yeah, and a lot of those came out of those big games and then down the stretch. And to his credit, the games where he was getting 20 touches at the end of the season, he was actually performing better on a yards per carry basis. It was very explosive. But all that being said, is it kind of similar to what you were saying about the Adams situation is you know me, unless it's the second half of the first round and somehow Michael Thomas is still there, I'm taking my running back in the first round. Sometimes I'm even taking one in the second, but a lot of drafts I've done so far, I've got an RB wide receiver because an Adams or a Julio or somebody like that is there in the second round, and then I'm taking them every single time. So that's where Drake's going, and Drake's not there for me in the third, where I would probably consider him in the third. But the thing is with him, I'm taking Chubb, I'm taking Mixon. Who else would I mean, I'm taking Josh Jacobs. You know, I'm taking Chris Carson. Chris Carson. You're taking
Chris Carson above Kenyon Drake?
1,000 times.
All right, let's bet that one too. Drake versus Carson.
Chris Carson last year.
Chris Carson's
RB10.
good. Yeah, Chris Carson is. Listen,
and
you were the one. You were the one yelling at me about Chris Carson like last year, being like, "No, Penny's definitely going to be the guy." I'm like, "No, it's clearly Chris."
No,
Carson.
I said he was going to be involved. Don't say he was going to be the guy.
Like, no, you're trying to win championships here. Drake. Chris Carson is a nice complimentary piece, and I like him where he's going in drafts. Kenyon Drake could be a league swinger. That's why I like him.
Chris Carson's going to be a league swinger for where he's going. The most, honestly, probably the most disrespected running back right now. 1,500 yards, what is it, like 9 or 10 touchdowns. The guy's a top 10 running back, has no Rashad Penny this year, has a rookie behind him for that Rashad Penny role, unless they still have Travis Homer, I think. But look, if the job is all his, it's the Seattle offense where he's proven time and again, averaging 15 points a game. Chris Carson is on so many of my teams and will be again this year. This is ridiculous.
Well, he's going in the 4th round, so you might as well take him.
Which is crazy. He should be going in the 3rd.
I agree. And if he falls, just like last year, when he falls to the 4th round, just scoop him up every single time. You have yourself a high-end running back too. But I want to throw this out.
You have RB1.
You have a fringe RB1. If you get the first pick and you take McCaffrey, just a few of the drafts I've been doing, Kelsey and Kittle are an interesting circumstance because most of the time they go in the 2nd round, but sometimes they fall back in 12-team leagues. That if you had McCaffrey in pick 1, could you ever envision a scenario with your 2nd and 3rd round pick, you take Kelsey and Kittle and just isolate everyone out of the market?
No, because I don't like playing the isolation game, because if you look at it, there's value in Kelsey or Kittle at that spot. But if you put them at the wide receiver position, you put them at the running back position, possibly, you're putting one of them in your flex at that spot.
You are, but if you moved Kelsey and called him a wide receiver, he'd be the 5th best receiver over the past 3 years.
If he repeats that again,
Which
well, if he
he's been the
repeats
number
last year-
he's been the number one tight end for 4 straight years.
And there's been times where he's been inconsistent on a week-to-week basis.
Not really. Like his bad games are like 13 points.
No, there's been some single-digit performances.
Yeah.
The point.
So
being,
what you're saying is that
it's-
every player that you take at the end of the second round is good every week. That's your word.
No, but I can guarantee that's not my words at all. But I can guarantee touches at that point. If you're going to tell me I have to put a tight end in my flex, you have to. My point being, before you jumped in, is you have to put him as a running back / wide receiver on the board and start looking at a best player available. If Carson's on the board versus those two, I'm taking Carson. If Drake, despite the fact that I don't like Drake, is at that spot, I'm taking Drake. Those are guaranteed touches every single week where I don't have to worry about game script killing them. Yes, obviously, if it's 24-0 in the start of the second quarter, it could be past it. But the problem is you're relying on a tight end, which is even worse than relying on a wide receiver most weeks. Like Michael Thomas is in this range, Julio Jones, Michael Thomas first round, but Julio Jones, Devontae Adams, like those type of wide receivers. I'm just not putting a tight end that early.
Devontae Adams isn't falling to pick 24. That's not happening. Kelsey is in some places.
And if you're going to put both, if you're going to put one in your stuff, look, you're also handcuffing yourself for the rest of the draft of what being able to take a best player available, which is going to be my last point, is that if somebody's falling, you already have 2 running backs. If somebody's falling, you have 3 wide receivers. Now you can't do anything about it. I'm never going to start my draft tying up my tight end in a flex spot. That I'm just not going to do it.
Let's see here. Inconsistent Travis Kelce, outside of week 17, which we don't play in fantasy, had fewer than 7 targets in a game once all season. Let's go through his game log here. 11 fantasy points, 25 fantasy points, 15 fantasy points, 16 fantasy points. Oh, here's a bad game. He only scored 11 fantasy points. He scored 10 fantasy points.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
10.
4 single digits, 5 single digits.
What are you looking at?
1, 2.
I'm
looking at his per game.
We're talking about PPR rankings here, pal.
We could do PPR. So what? It jumped one of them up to not being a single digit performance.
I see 1 single digit performance all year, and it's like 9.7 points.
No, there's no way.
Give me the weeks then. Give me the weeks.
5, 6, and 7 in a row.
5, 6,
he went 4.
5, 6, and 7. So weeks 5, he was 4 for 70. So there's 11 points. So there's 11 points.
11. Wow.
4 for 50. I mean, this is his floor. Like, what are you talking about?
I'm talking about the single digit, and you didn't include 2018. 6 for 46, 5 for 61, 7 for 61, 5 for 54, 1 for 6 in week 1. Like that, I won't even count that one. We won't even count that one for you. 5 for 40, 4 for 37. I'm just saying, there's down weeks for him. Again, it can work. I'm not going to do it because it goes to the second point as well, which is, again, what I'm going to keep saying. You get to round 6 and some ridiculous value is slipping down the board. You can't do anything about it. You can do nothing about it. And that's my biggest problem with the draft, too, is you've officially stopped yourself from being able to get an amazing value.
But who's the amazing value at tight end in round 6?
I'm not talking about tight end. I'm talking about your flex spot.
Who cares?
If you start,
just draft. You don't need the flex spot because you have open spots on your roster. Just take the best fucking players, and these are the best players.
You're trading off the other 2 positions already. Like, oh my god, you do it. You tell me these leagues. You show me the leagues you win with 2 tight ends to start the second and third round.
If they fall to me in your flex league, I'm definitely doing it. I'm definitely winning.
Please do.
Definitely winning.
Please do.
All right. Back to running backs. Nick Chubb, 11. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 12. Gurley, 13. Eckler, 14. Aaron Jones, Josh Jacobs, James Conner, Le'Veon Bell, Chris Carson, Jonathan Taylor. I think from that, basically, that entire range of 9 guys could be somewhat interchangeable. I love the upside. I'm enamored with the upside of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'm like Drake. He could be a reach player for me, but the other guys are all like kind of the same to me. Like I could see Bell having a really good year. I could see Carson have a really good year. Jacobs, I just don't think is ever going to catch. And I don't know what the hell's going on in Green Bay, but it's gonna take like Aaron Jones has such weird splits where if Jamal Williams is inactive, he's awesome. If Devontae Adams is inactive, he's awesome. But now they bring in AJ Dillon too. Like,
yeah,
what are they using him for? I don't know. I can't figure it out.
For the short game, and that's the biggest thing, is there is people with fewer yards and more touchdowns, or there's nobody with more yards. And like the fact that you look at McCaffrey, who had, look at how many yards he had, like we're talking about what, 2,300 some odd yards, but just rushing 1,300, 300 more rushing yards, only one fewer touchdown. Aaron Jones had 1,000 yards and 16 touchdowns. That just doesn't happen. This is the reverse of Leonard Fournette. That's the issue here. So if he's losing some of those touches where he was already going to have regression for the touchdown department to have that kind of success rate. Now you add in AJ Dillon, who should be getting all those goal line touches because they've been trying. You mentioned Jamal Williams. The Packers have been trying to add that dimension to their offense, that power option to complement Aaron Jones. I don't hate Aaron Jones, despite what everybody may think. It's just he's so touchdown reliant, unlike Derrick Henry, who scored the exact amount of the same touchdowns, 16, but it took him 1,540 yards. And that's Derrick freaking Henry. Like, so I'm very scared of Aaron Jones as an RB1. I have him on 0 teams. I'd rather take Kenyon Drake every single time, to go back to the Kenyon Drake comparison. The one question I do have for you is, was he inside your top 10? Did I miss Miles Sanders?
Yeah, I'm at number 9.
Okay. Fair enough. Cool.
There's not really,
right.
I just feel like there's not really much to say about Miles Sanders.
No, there's not.
I'm worried that they misuse him and that he's not like the lock that everyone seems to think he is, because I worry about, it's not necessarily like Boston Scott I worry about, it's Doug Peterson that I worry about. But it seems like he's carved himself out that role. But like, I would prefer the upside of Drake in this spot. I don't know how good the Eagles are going to be. They're really weird.
No, I would prefer Miles Sanders, mostly because Doug Peterson's very rarely had a running back like him. And here's the good news. Alshon Jeffrey probably starting the season on the pup. Who knows what Deshaun Jackson has left if he's not suspended or whatever. Even if he's not, like, let's just say he's ready for week 1. You have Deshaun Jackson, who's not Deshaun Jackson anymore. You have Jalen Reagor, who's a rookie. You have JJ Arcega-Whiteside, who was a huge bust in year 1. I'm not saying his career is done for, but you have him. You have Greg Ward, who was their leading receiver down the stretch. Receiver, not tight end.
I like Greg
And
Ward.
then Josh Hightower, rookie. Quez Watkins, rookie. So it's just, this could be very much what we saw at the end of last year, where the only 4 pieces you care about are Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, Goddard, and Ertz. And Miles Sanders and Boston Scott were going 8 ham every single week together. So I'm definitely on Miles Sanders.
Yeah, okay. I have him at number 9. I think he's a fine pick. He's not like I don't like him. I really like him. I think that he's good. So some guys you just don't have the strongest like lean on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The Le'Veon Bell one, when you said you're not that scared of him, I think people hate on him too much last year because he was just consistently consistent. He never won you a week.
That team was,
he never let you down.
Really bad last year. Despite their record, they were inept.
Well, Sam Darnold's still there, so I don't know how much is.
But just, yeah, listen, there's a couple guys like this, and I kind of put them towards the back because I don't really know. Maybe Carson shouldn't be in this mix, and I should move him up higher, and I'm going to reassess that because this is why I talk to you about these things, despite the shit that I give you. Connor, Bell, Montgomery, I think are the 3. Like, they're getting carries. They're going to get touches. And that's valuable to an extent.
Yeah, and I don't want to poo-poo and ruin all the hype and fun that we're having here, but Connor is the one I'm most worried about from a COVID standpoint.
Yeah,
because
you've brought
back from cancer.
You've brought this up. Yeah, he's a very high risk. If it's not going to be Connor, I think it does make sense to potentially take a flyer in the later rounds on one of the Steelers' backups. I've been team McFarland, and so are you. But who would be the other options? Would it be Jalen Samuels? Or would it be Benny Schnell?
No, it was Snell. To be honest with you, the only reason I think Samuels is going to be on this roster is because of the concerns of Connor. If it were anything else, where like maybe their number 1 running back, look, go back to Dalvin Cook, like without the contract concerns, or Chris Carson, like if they just had a running back that they weren't that worried about, I think Jalen Samuels would be I think he'd be off the roster. Anthony McFarland came in and took his job.
Okay. Rest of the guys in this, where do you have Clyde Edwards-Helaire ranked?
I have him inside my top 10, and I've admittedly said this time and again, I will move him down if we get to mid-August and there's still 0 preseason games, still barely any practices outside of just team interest squads like baseball is doing with interest squad type, like, or whatever, just want to say, the jersey's difference on the other side, red versus blue, whatever you want to call it. But if you look at it, like if that's all we're getting, I will discount Edwards-Helaire a little bit and probably slide back to kind of where you have him as mid-teens. Mostly, and it's not even because he's a rookie. It's also because he's a rookie under Andy Reid's very complicated playbook. That's where I'm kind of going with it, because I had D'Angelo Williams, you know this, I have him on my podcast, and I asked him the question about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I said, like, look, I'm getting a lot of pushback on this. They drafted him in the first round, supremely talented. I don't care if he gets 20 touches a game. I don't think he gets 20 touches a game. I think he gets 16 to 18. And if he told me RB blank on the Chiefs getting 16 to 18, he's going to be an RB1 for me. I said, what are your thoughts with the rookie? He said, NFL teams don't invest a first-round pick in a rookie running back to not play him. And then you also heard about...
Unless you're Bill Belichick or Pete Carroll.
Yeah, so there you go. Which Pete Carroll still, that's why I brought up the penny thing before, is I asked him at the combine. He didn't seem very sold on the penny pick at the time. But in any case, yeah, you're right. Outside of those two, Andy Reid, to go back to Andy Reid, and let's throw out Kareem Hunt because we know Spencer Ware got hurt. LaShawn McCoy under Andy Reid was the lead guy. Now, did he get over 1,000 rushing yards? No, but he was a rookie who came in and was the lead option that year.
Yeah, no, listen, it's something that it's not for the faint of heart to take Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Right. That's for sure. Huge bust potential.
Huge. I don't necessarily think that there's bust potential. Based on where you have to take him, there's gigantic bust potential. I just think there's a situation that arises where he does like nothing for the first few weeks and potentially all year. Like that's one of the outcomes. I just don't think that's very likely. But let's say weeks 1, 2, and 3, he's like, on the back end of a bad timeshare with Damian Williams. He gets like 30% of the snaps, that kind of thing. And then I do think that over the course of the season that he'll work more and more and more to become the workhorse in the Chiefs offense, which is what you're trying to find and why you would draft him in this spot. But a lot of people said, well, just don't draft him and then trade for him after 3 weeks. Like anyone who drafts Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you're not going to be able to buy low on him. Like if someone has spent a second round pick on him, people don't just give up that player for nothing. Like I hate
Miles Sanders last year was because he was 5th, 6th round.
Yes.
People are more willing to part with that.
That is the entire, no one ever thinks of the psychology behind these trades. When it comes to fantasy football. It is because I play in a league with knobs all the time that I have for like the past 20 years, and this is how they think, and I feel the same way too. Like I knew about this guy. David Montgomery was the perfect example of this last year. People drafted him in the 3rd round after he got all this buzz. You need to draft this rookie. He's going to be so good. Let's go up the board and we'll get David Montgomery. He sucks, but not to the point where like you don't play him because you're still playing him every week. And he's not good, and people are trying to like give you like shitty offers for him to buy low, like 70 cents on the dollar, which you probably should have taken the first time that you got the deal, but you didn't because you spent the 3rd round pick on him, and you thought you were smart because you reached on him. If you take Clyde Edwards-Helaire this year, you have reached on him, and you don't want to admit you're wrong. And that's what happens in the psychology of these trades. And you'll never be able to buy him low. You're just never going to be able to do it.
You're 100% right, but let's swing this back positively for a second here. So in a different carry to reception ratio than him, but Austin Eckler last year, 224 touches. If I said Austin Eckler's getting 224 touches with the Kansas City Chiefs, people would be losing their effing mind. They would be taking him top 5 because they already want to take Austin Eckler as an RB1 with the Chargers. I don't. And again, I do. People do. I know you don't. I don't either. But now, I don't have Edwards-Helaire for that split. I have him for 230 touches. I have him for more touches. I have him more in the running game with only about 45 to 50 receptions. But again, that equals out to about 17 touches, 18 touches a week. And again, if you just told people, like you want to talk about the psychology of it, if you just told somebody that, hey, put Austin Eckler on the Chiefs, again, people will be losing their effing minds to try and get him.
I'm Team Gurley. Are you Team Gurley? I feel like you're not.
No, I am. I'm Team Gurley for where he's going and what you have to pay to get him because I am Team not Gurley's knee. That's my biggest concern. But I am Team Gurley in the Falcons backfield with the competition of Ito Smith and Kadri Olesen 100% because I'm not that sold on Ito Smith for all the excitement he had for 2 weeks last year. Then when everybody's like, oh, look what he can do. He's still Ito Smith and Kadri Olesen can't catch. So this backfield is Todd Gurley's. And no, he's not going to be 25 touches a game like he was in his prime with the Rams.
He'll be 20.
But
He'll double his receptions from last year.
As long as he just makes it 14 games and you're going to get buku reward on investment. Return on investment.
Nice for all say there. That's pretty good. Austin Eckler, I have at number 14. I like Eckler, but I don't love Eckler. So therefore that means I will have no Eckler because some people love him.
Yep, and unfortunately, we're in 100% agreement on that one. So something's going to go bad. We don't often agree like that perfectly. Like I have him exactly at 14, and I have 0 shares of Austin Eckler.
It's just tough for me to think that he can replicate and have the workload and success that he did while Melvin Gordon was out last year. I think that he's fine as a split, and like as a 60% split, I think he's a very high-end running back too. And I think that he's going to be pretty...
That's where he was when Gordon was 100% at the middle of the season.
Yeah,
from then on out.
And I think that's how we're going to have to assess this, whether it be Justin Jackson or Joshua Kelly, like, or even just Tyrod running on his own until Herbert gets it, and Herbert might be running. Like, unless
Herbert's also more aggressive downfield. I don't know how much he's going to dump off as much. Tyrod might actually be better for, I'm not saying this, it's definitive, like that's not my argument. I'm just saying it's a scenario that could happen where Tyrod is actually better for Eckler than Herbert is.
Yeah, I can see that. I just think that we really disregard how important Phillip Rivers is to the success of his running backs just by constantly keeping them involved.
I did a QB tendency article and I pulled it up and I don't have quick access to it. Phillip Rivers was either number 1 or number 2 in percentage of throws going to the running back.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. But I have Jonathan Taylor at number 20. I think that, you draft him to play over Mac, and then like everyone's kind of talking about Nyheim Hines. Have you actually seen anyone pull the trigger on Nyheim Hines, like actually reach for him, or is he like a 13th round pick?
I have. Well, no, that's usually where I'm taking him.
Okay.
I guess reach rate might like 11th round. I'm just taking Hines as I think we talked about it on the show when we did the running back one with Chris, is that he's poor man's Austin Eckler. He is going to, I think Jonathan Taylor is a better pass catcher than people realize, but to go back to the little Fournette conversation, that's the conversation you're having. He's probably more Fournette. He's probably more of a dump off pass catcher. Has good hands, should be used a little bit where he doesn't have to come off the field, but he's not Nyheim Hines. He's not Austin Eckler. He's not Aaron Jones. He's not that kind of like whatever. So if you look at it, Jonathan Taylor has to come in as a rookie. Mac is not even close talent-wide, but he is the guy who performed pretty well at times, and especially behind that offensive line where it's just going to be a cluster to come in. Jonathan Taylor feels like the one that should be in that Miles Sanders conversation we were having earlier, where he's in the 5th, 6th round. People get frustrated in the first 3 weeks and then sell. He feels more like that one.
Yeah, I don't even I don't look at anyone else's rankings because I personally don't give a shit. These are my rankings. But I like to talk to you about yours. Like, where do you have him ranked? And where do people have Jonathan Taylor ranked? He was a very tough player to rank for me personally.
Oh, he's all over the place. Jonathan Taylor, I've seen go as early as like the 3rd, 4th round. I've seen Jonathan Taylor fall to the 6th, 7th round. It's really going to depend on who's in your league. If somebody has a fascination for him, Jonathan Taylor, I have. Again, now, so there's 2 different ways to look at this. So I have Jonathan Taylor at 25. I want to bring the Miles Sanders conversation back into this because you brought it up from before, and this was my argument for Sanders last year, is that once Taylor is in control of this backfield, which will happen sometime as a rookie, it might take 3 weeks, it might take 6 weeks, it might take 9 weeks. Once he does, you're talking about RB1 numbers. So that's where you have to play the Jonathan Taylor game. If you want to sit back and try to buy low, you're not guaranteed to be able to buy low because somebody just might love the guy. But you can try and play that game, or if you take him, you're probably going to be frustrated to start the year. But if you have the patience similar to Miles Sanders last year, that's where you're going to pay off in the second half of the season.
Okay. I can see that. So I do think that there is value in this backfield because we know that Austin Eckler is a much better pass catcher than Melvin Gordon, for example. Mm-hmm. But it's not like Melvin Gordon didn't end up with like 6 targets a game anyway.
No, 100%. By the way, I found it. Yeah, so he was number 2. You want to guess who number 1 was throwing to the running back percentage-wise?
Brady?
No. I don't think I can think I give you 20 guesses and you would never guess because
one second. Hold on 1 second. Is it just from guys last year or tendency over time?
Yes. I went back more than, but this is specifically just from last year.
Kyle Allen.
No.
I just think McCaffrey.
Good guess though. He's actually in the top 15%, but you got to remember it's percentage wise. So it wasn't all Christian McCaffrey.
Oh, is this person a starter?
He's not anymore.
Oh, fuck.
Hey, I'll give you a huge hint. He is elite.
Oh, really? Flacco.
Joe Flacco.
Joe Flacco should be starting for the Jets. He's better than Sam Darnold.
25.6% of his passes to the backfield. Phillip Rivers was 24.6.
Yeah, but how many games did Flacco play last year? Like 5?
Well, that's 64 backfield targets. I mean, I did put a minimum of at least 100 targets out of this.
Okay.
But Phillip Rivers, if he makes you feel any better, Phillip Rivers, if you just talk about percentage going to the running back, outperformed Flacco. So if it's running back versus backfield.
Yeah, so I think the reason I ranked Jonathan Taylor at 20 is because I think that he ends up getting the job. He'll be in a split either 2-way or 3-way, whatever it might be from day one. And then I think that he can kind of luck sack his way into a bunch of cheap catches anyway.
Oh, 100%. And it's really going to come down to how quickly he unseats Marlon Mack. I think Nyheim Hines' role is going to stay no matter what. It's just how much is Mack mixed in. And the good news about it is that if they see a situation where it's third down and they don't want Hines out there, and maybe it's 3rd and 4 and they want it to be kind of disguised, whether or not they're going to pass or run or whatever. And so Taylor will be out there over Mack because Mack can't catch very well.
I have Josh Jacobs at 16. Like, honestly, I just don't think that he's going to catch any passes. And he's not.
I do.
And he's not Derrick Henry.
Oh, no, he's not Derrick Henry. But I mean, to be honest with you, like, even though I do, actually give you my exact. I have him for 30 receptions. It's not like I have him world-breaking receptions, but to the Nick Chubb argument, he was right in line with Nick Chubb. He's only about, in my projections, 9 receptions behind Joe Mixon. So if you think about Nick Chubb, you think about Joe Mixon. That's the tendency, though, of those guys, and to go back to them, is that they are RB1s, but it's a very slim margin, especially when you're talking about half and full point PPR, when you're in this group of players where 10 receptions, 1 touchdown. I mean, these are guys that could slip back 6 spots before you blink.
21 to 30 in the rankings. David Montgomery, flea market. Number 21, Melvin Gordon. So Montgomery, Gordon, Singletary, White, David Johnson, Jordan Howard, Kareem Hunt, Cam Akers. Fantasy Pros has apparently ranked Mark Ingram at number 29 because I only have him ranked in worst place. And then Raheem Mostert, who demanded a trade. I want to wait and see what happens with him before anything, but
He's not going anywhere.
I don't think so either, but like I still don't trust him in the 49ers backfield. Montgomery, I don't see why people are so high on Melvin Gordon for one thing. Like people are like, yeah, I'll take Melvin Gordon. He's a running back too. It's like, yeah, very low end with like no upside. Montgomery, I think could be good.
The problem is Montgomery is not that good. That's the issue. Montgomery as a running back is not that. This is a perfect example, and I'm not poo-pooing them because I use Pro Football Focus for a lot of things. They have a lot of terrific stats out there. The point about it is that whether it's Pro Football Focus, whether it's Faded Noise, whether it's whatever it is, don't hone in on one specific statistic or projection or analysis or metric if you're like talking about his weight to speed or whatever, a lot of those other sites do out there.
Yeah, but you know that I don't play that game. I'm just thinking out of running backs down this list, like he's a part of that like Le'Veon Bell, James Conner tier. Like there's a path to where this guy averages 21 touches a game. Now, he might not be good.
I don't see it.
I see. Well, how many did he have last year?
Tariq Cohen's still there.
Cohen,
David Montgomery's.
Tariq Cohen is a gadget player. He really is.
Okay. And David Montgomery, even last year with a gadget player, didn't even get 300 touches. You want to put that one, I will give you the over under 299.5. Under, because even when he's running the ball, he's still not that good. And what I was going back to is the broken tackles. People got enamored with he led college football with broken tackles. Broken tackles in itself is a flawed stat because you could talk about the fact of whether or not the offensive line did such a good job that an arm on the guy counts as a broken tackle. So again, don't get caught up on one stat, but even if you like David Montgomery, it's just, I don't see where he's the talented enough running to average 4.7 yards per carry. And he's not going to have a lot of passing game work. He's going to have less receptions or fewer receptions than Josh Jacobs. So I understand he's the lead option here, but I don't think he's any better of a lead. I think you bringing up Melvin Gordon, I think they're kind of in the same bucket for me.
Well, that's why I have them both back to back in the rankings. But I just look at like David Montgomery. What do you have? 278 touches last year, only 25 receptions on 35 targets. I'm not expecting a ton out of the passing game from him. But like as we saw from when the season went along, like only 6 carries week 1. He had 2 against New Orleans, but then he has these games 27, 14, 17, 14, 13, 16, 20, 14, 13, 23, all to end the season. Nothing like out of this world. I'm agreeing with you that I don't think he's very good, but like I think he's also like in a similar bucket as Melvin Gordon and David Johnson for that matter. But eventually these guys start falling so much that they're volume players. That's the one thing that I care about is this volume. And I know that he's gonna be on the field a bunch. Maybe he flukes out and ends up with 35 receptions this year somehow. Nick Foles just enjoys dumping it off to David Montgomery. Maybe he improves a little bit. But he's the guy that they're probably going to be using inside the 5-yard line. He has touchdown upside. He's going to have a ton of carries on the ground. I think he's not sexy. I don't think he's fun to own. But like, to have him as your running back 3 where he's currently being drafted, you could use him as a low-end number 2 depending on how you want to do your draft.
And that's certainly fine if you want to take him as your flex, a low end RB2 in that range. Yeah, sure, he's fine. I'm just to the Melvin Gordon comparison. As you said, I would take him over Melvin Gordon. I think I actually would prefer Melvin Gordon because I do think he has a little bit higher of an upside given those teams and how they're going to use their backfields, even with Philip Lindsay. And I've been a campaigner, would you rather say? I've been a proponent of taking Philip. Like everybody all of a sudden hates Philip Lindsay. The guy rushed for over 1,000, not even received, rushed for over 1,000 yards 2 years in a row. And all of a sudden Philip Lindsay is dead. Oh, Philip Lindsay can't be Austin Eckler for the Broncos. That's a sidebar there real quick. But David Montgomery, like, what was he, 3.7, 3.8 yards per carry last year? To go back to that, why I think he's a very good comparison. You brought him up for Melvin Gordon is because Melvin Gordon's the same thing. He's kind of a volume runner. He's not running for over 4 yards per carry. Can we go back to your most hated player, though? Because I want to bring in the rookie because I know we haven't got him to your ranks yet. But Mark Ingram should be an RB2. I know you hate him. But until he gets hurt, he is the lead option who is also used in the passing game on the what everybody wants J.K. Dobbins to be overdrafted as an RB3, which is bananas to me because J.K. Dobbins is not going to be involved unless this goes to the Alexander Madison thing from before. Yes, if Mark Ingram gets hurt and goes down, J.K. Dobbins has top 10 upside. There's no question about it. But are you going to hang on to a guy that you're drafting as an RB3, waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, hoping that Mark Ingram gets hurt? I know you are, but everybody else shouldn't.
I'm kind of weird. I have J.K. Dobbins at number 33. Like he's not a reach, and
even further down.
And he is a player that people are reaching on for sure. But I totally agree with you that he feels like a bench mistake player to me. And there's no real way to quantify that, but it's the same case that I made with Madison. You draft Madison, you're probably going to end up using Madison when you shouldn't. You draft Latavius Murray, you're never using Latavius Murray unless you should use Latavius Murray. Like I think that there's value in that certainty, which is a really weird way to do rankings, but I really feel strongly about that.
So it's the same thing. But the problem is J.K. Dobbins is both. Is for a while there, you'll be like, all right, fine. I'm just going to put him on my bench. I know I don't have to draft or I don't have to play him. But then he'll have the Gus Edwards game where he gets, they're up 40-10 and he gets 11 carries for, 60 yards and a score. And all of a sudden everybody's like, oh crap, look, J.K. Dobbins, he's going to get more involved. And they're not going to put him in a lineup and be idiots about it. Or the biggest problem is just throw all that out the window. The biggest problem is what you have to pay to get Dobbins because there's one in every single league drafting him as an RB3, and that's insane right now.
Tell me about Cam Akers this year and what his potential upside is. And if you had to guess on the split in the Rams backfield, what's it going to be between the three of those guys or potentially even two of them?
I think it's going to be two. I think it's going to be very much like, I know I keep using their Chargers as a reference point, but I think it's going to be very much like once Melvin Gordon was 100%, is it's Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson. And Malcolm Brown, I don't get the fascination from. People have this like imagery of like how great he did, and it was like two performances.
I know why, because everyone played Gurley that week on DraftKings, only to watch him come out of the game and watch Malcolm Brown come in and steal 2 fucking touchdowns.
And I think that's all it is. If you look at Malcolm Brown's going to be the third option, the backup option. Cam Akers is actually somebody who has RB1 potential. If like Darrell Henderson doesn't step forward this year as what we thought he could be last year and can't be like that pass catching dynamic weapon who, gets 8 to 12 touches per week. Actually very much like Kareem Hunt. Like that's the upside people thought of him from last year. If he doesn't do that, Cam Akers can steal some of that work. Cam Akers is a very good all-around running back who people probably would have talked about more if he was on any other offense with any better offensive line than Florida State's garbage offensive. I mean, we're talking Miami Dolphins, Cincinnati Bengals offensive line last year is awful, and he still performed great in that offense. Cam Akers could be one of the best in this range if you're looking for somebody like screw Dobbins and Taylor with those mixed backfields. If you're talking about one who might have the easiest path to getting 20 touches a game, it might actually be Akers.
So should I be moving, should I draft Akers or Devin Singletary?
It depends on your roster construction. Devin Singletary is going to be exactly what Devin Singletary was last year. That's why they've drafted Zach Moss to replace Frank Gore. And actually, you might have to concern yourself more from Josh Allen rushing touchdowns going to Moss because Singletary was never going to be that guy, which is fine. Singletary is fine as an RB2. But if you're looking for, as you said, the league winners, Singletary is going to be an RB2. Singletary is going to be Singletary. If you're looking for somebody who could have that wide range of outcomes where, maybe you don't even use Cam Akers, but maybe you found yourself an RB1, that's the pick that you make.
Okay. Who else from here do I want to talk about? David Johnson? Is he like Frank Gore now?
He's better than Frank Gore if he's, oh God, what was that? Was that the Bengals or the Browns game where it looked like he was walking? that towards the line of scrimmage, that clip that was out there that everybody started retweeting, which is a great clip. Like, he looked so freaking slow. It wasn't slow motion, anything. If he's like that, forget about it. Obviously, the Texans and Bill O'Brien think he's more than that. And if he is, you want to talk about a backfield where you could talk about 20 touches per game. I actually have David Johnson as RB20. I think he's got a ceiling for higher than that, but he is by far one of the riskiest. Like, all these names we've mentioned so far, Gordon is safer. Taylor, even as a rookie, probably safer. I mean, there's a non-zero chance by week 4 David Johnson's not even fantasy relevant.
I like James White with Cam.
I like James White, period, but my concern is actually a little bit more on the Sonny Michel side, and also slightly to James White with Damian Harris, because they drafted Damian Harris thinking they might fall into an all-down running back who can catch passes. And if you look at Damian Harris, who people seem to have forgotten that's why they were scared of Sonny Michel last year, missed the entire rookie season being hurt. I still like James White. I made that clear. I said I like James White, but I'm scared of that backfield. I'm so scared of it with Damian Harris healthy. Now you're talking 4 guys are in the mix again.
It always feels like James White has his role, and he knows
it. Does.
And like it's like when he was a kid, he listened to The Rock. He knows his role. He shuts his mouth, and he just stands out there, and it works out for him. Like, he's going to be relatively inconsistent. But again, this is PPR scoring for these rankings, that he just does provide value there. It's the same reason like Kareem Hunt is number 27. Maybe I have those 2 guys in the wrong spot. Maybe I should change Kareem Hunt with James White, move from 27 to 24, 24 to 27. It does feel like Kareem Hunt's going to be involved.
Kareem Hunt's going to be on the field. I mean, what are they going to do? Go to Rashad Higgins? I mean, he's essentially, like I said, he's essentially their 3rd wide receiver plus some touches out of the backfield. I would do the same. I have Kareem Hunt in front of James White.
I'm going to switch those guys in the rankings. Thank you for your consultation on that one. Jordan Howard, like, I guess you and I seem to be the only 2 people who, and
I think so.
It's funny because I don't like Jordan Howard, but
I've never liked him.
It's just, he's a parasite. If he's on a team, he gets the ball. He's kind of how I feel about David Montgomery in Chicago, but just he's on Miami.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good comparison. The best comparison I'll make is the one I made coming out of college is he's very much like Tevin Coleman. He's straight line. He's taking what he's given, and that can work. But the problem is you can find 20 other running backs who do the exact same thing.
But
you don't make it.
But they found Jordan Howard.
They did. But at the same time, like, the reason people are so down on Jordan Howard are twofold, is because that's all he does. And yes, he's easily replaceable, but you have to make it to the NFL and be a running back by having some talent. But the other problem is because all they remember, it's kind of like the Eric Ebron, is all you're envisioning in your mind is dropping a ball at the 2-yard line as he's about to score, dropping this pass here, dropping this pass there. He doesn't need to be involved in the passing game. He's going to be the lead option in this backfield, probably like a 60-40 split. And if he does come out of the first 3 weeks and averages 2.5 yards per carry, okay, he probably loses his job.
No, you see, you say that, but it's not like they didn't just keep playing like, oh, you know who's great? Balaj with his 1.1 yards
Matt
per
Breida.
carry. Let's give no, but I'm saying last year, it's like, you could have turned to anyone else on the roster, but it's like, we're going to keep rolling with Kalen Balaj. He's pretty good. Like, Jordan Howard is the perfect guy for the Dolphins, who's like mediocre, and they're like, oh, no, he's good. Don't worry about him.
And look, the Dolphins are actually probably smart in what they're doing. Is unlike the Giants, who realized in the rebuild, they took Saquon Barkley and wasted some of his best years. They said, you know what, forget it. We know running backs are going to be there in the next year's draft are terrific. We'll waste 1 year just rolling out Jordan Howard every single week, but they're rolling him out there and an improved offensive line. Why not?
Very quickly, do you have any interest in any Detroit running back?
Yes, I do.
Is it carry on?
No, it's DeAndre Swift.
Why?
100%.
I have no interest in any of them, so that's why I'm asking.
Tons of interest in DeAndre Swift, because DeAndre Swift on any other team, if he was taken instead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire by the Chiefs, DeAndre Swift is a tier 1 running back in this draft class. An amazing all around terrific. I mean, top 10 talent in most drafts, as like, that's what it like. If he was in the Barkley draft, he might have gone to the Giants. If he was in the Zeke draft, he might have gone to the Cowboys.
Yeah, but you know where he ended up? In fucking Detroit, the wasteland of running backs, where he's going to split time with 7 other dudes.
But see, and that's where I was going to go with this. Unless, similar to the Doug Peterson thing, is, Patricia didn't trust Kerryon Johnson. He's never had somebody like a Swift. Yes, this obviously could be a complete committee between both of them and somebody else sprinkled in on this roster. It might even be Bo Scarborough still on the roster getting all the short yardage work, but that's the bad case. But the thing is because of that, because people are so scared of Patricia coming from the Patriots regime, is that Swift's price isn't prohibitive to what his upside is. His upside is top 15, but you don't have to pay that. And that's the good thing about it is you can take Swift where he is cheaper than Taylor, and you're not stuck with the, oh God, I kind of want to start him because of what I paid.
Yeah. I mean, Carry-on's banged up a lot. He's missed 14 to 32 games in his career.
And he's not Swift. He's Carry-on Johnson.
Yeah, but he's there. That's the thing.
Carry Johnson's also not that good.
It doesn't matter. They keep playing running backs that aren't very good. This has just been the thing over and over and over again, that as long as you are healthy and currently on the active roster, you're going to touch the ball. This is what happens with Matt Patricia. It just I don't want to spend a end of the fourth. Like, he's going in the mid 50s. So he's what, early fifth round? Give me anyone else. Like, if he falls to the eighth, sure.
No. I just took him there in the fifth round recently as my third running back.
And you think that you're going to beat my team that has Kelsey and Kittle on it? Give your fucking head a shake, pal.
Yeah, because we got the rest of the draft to talk about.
No, I mean, I've already built the best team. I have the best players. That's what you do. You draft the good players and you win the leagues. You draft these guys. Yeah, I want a guy who gets 8 touches a game. He's great.
I tell you, the same thing was said about Miles Sanders until last year.
If you had...
Doug Peterson. Peterson.
Sure, but if you drafted Miles Sanders last year, you didn't fucking make the playoffs because he wasn't good until like week 12.
If you were patient, if you listen to us, that's being like you and me and the fantasy community, like the people trying to tell you to be patient on him, you did.
You still needed someone to replace those numbers. He was great if you were still good by week 12. If you were relying on him to be good for your team to be good.
I like how you keep using Kelsey in that argument, where if you just, like, you also said taking Kittle. Yeah, like, that's the thing. It's like,
because you isolate the market. No one else can have no one else can have a good tight end.
But again, that's the guy that's in your league drafting 5 quarterbacks, and everybody's gonna have to come to me for trades, and nobody's gonna have a good quarterback.
I'm not looking to trade them. I'm looking to play both of them. And I'm making you try to compete with my tight ends while you're rolling out like Noah Fant.
And I'll happily do it. No, I'm not rolling out Noah Fant, but I'll happily roll out Hayden Hurst and TJ Hawkinson, or one of the Darren Wallers or Mark Andrews of last year. Because here's the thing: stop putting Kelsey in the flex, because the argument's about the second tight end. If it's just Kittle with his 80, 90 points, he's like wide receiver 22, and you're talking about taking him at the 2-3 turn. But we're talking running backs. We should do a tight end show just on those two guys.
Oh, we will end up doing the tight end show. We just where to draft these two guys. Anyone else that you think that we should talk about from the back end? Like, if you're late in draft, so we kind of talked about the top end. We've talked about this middle tier of guys. But then once you get out of round 7 or so, and then you have these backups, back end of timeshares, these type of guys, is there anyone that really sticks out to you? Someone like, hey, Nyheim Hines was someone that you brought up, like a 13th round pick. I can get behind that. I think it's a good pick.
Yeah, so I'll give you 4, and I'll touch on one really super quick, is if you go to Damian Williams, that just in case Clyde Edwards-Helaire doesn't even barely step on the field, but like maybe 5 or 6 receptions a game at best, or I should say targets, Damian Williams could still work out. So I'll throw that out there. It's just because of how cheap he's going, you can almost take both on a lot of teams. And
that's a sensible move, actually. Like, that would, I would almost reach on Damian Williams a little bit if I had Clyde's Edwards-Helaire. It's probably not a statistically smart move, but it would help my peace of mind.
Oh, 1,000% it would probably make you feel a lot better about your draft. I will go to Keyshawn Vaughn in Tampa Bay. He's a rookie, so there's a little concern there. But the good thing about him is that everybody in that backfield, he is by far the best pass blocker. And he's next to Tom Brady, who yells at people when they chip a block. So if you're just talking about the opportunity to play alongside Tom Brady in that offense, granted, it could be Ronald Jones. Like Ronald Jones could just be LeGarrette Blount for them, and screw the passing game. He just runs for 16 touchdowns. But I will say, if there's a chance, because of the frustration for how bad that Ronald Jones still is in the passing game, including pass blocking, I'm taking a couple flyers on Vaughn. But depending on what your draft is, that same thought process has moved Vaughn off the draft board. So I'll give you the 2 others that I'm talking about. I have so much of Darius Geis, and the Darius Geis is the patient game. You're not probably going to enjoy the very beginning of the season, but he's going so cheap that it's not even the Miles Sanders. It's so cheap that he is the one that you just put on your bench, and you're not even trying to buy low because you understand you're going to be patient with him. If Darius Geis gets past the injuries from the first 2 years, like Leonard Fournette did finally in his 3rd season, he's better than Leonard Fournette, and he should easily lead this backfield from what we saw from Adrian Peterson 2 years ago. Got 1,000 yards, chugging along for 1,000 yards. Darius Geis is an elite talent. Obviously, there's a huge question of how much of that percentage, is he 90%? Is he 100%? We don't know what he is, but that's why he's worth the risk. And then same team, And I don't want to take two guys out of the same backfield, but the Kelvin Harmon injury and Steven Sims being their number 2, Antonio Gandy-Golden being their number 3, potentially, who's a rookie and very raw coming out of Liberty. Anthony Gibson, like, I think the Christian McCaffrey stuff is stupid, but Anthony Gibson could work his way into 7, 8, 9 touches per week, being used both in the backfield and in the passing game.
Well, especially now that
Antonio Gibson. I said Anthony Gibson. Antonio Gibson.
Well, now that Calvin Harmon is out, I think you're just going to see more and more people end up on the field with him. Do you have any interest in Boston Scott?
Yeah.
I like Boston
Because he's Darren Sproles.
Yeah.
He's Darren Sproles. Perfect RB3. Theo Riddick. Perfect RB3 in a PPR.
Like, I think I will end up with more shares on my teams. Like, I'm far more likely to draft Boston Scott than I am Miles Sanders at their current positions.
Where do you have Scott? I have Boston Scott in a full point PPR. I have him at 34.
No, I have him at 52. I guess I should be moving him up.
I have him for 40 receptions.
If that's the case, then he's a fringe RB3, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
34.
Like, do you want Zach Moss at all? I don't.
Only at his price. I was one of the people, and I'm saying this not to be like, look at me, because I could be wrong. This is a rookie who's never stepped on the NFL field. But I was one of the people that, similar to David Montgomery, I was pushing against this guy. Like, Zach Moss just isn't that good. He's actually, you know, it's someone like Jordan Howard. He's not that good. He's fine at what he does, and he's a power back. He's like a lesser version of Derrick Henry. But if you're talking about this offense and what they tried to do with Frank Gore, he's stepping into Frank Gore's role and probably is going to have more success than Frank Gore did.
Potentially. I mean, it's kind of a chicken and egg thing. Like, if you think that Zach Moss is going to score a bunch of touchdowns based on the role that he has, then Josh Allen's not a good pick. But if you think that Josh Allen just continues to monopolize the goal line work, then Zach Moss is useless.
No, because Josh Allen could do what he did last year in the Frank Gore role. Frank Gore failed at the goal line a couple times.
Yeah, but I mean, do we think that's a Frank Gore problem, or do we think it's like the Bills' bad offensive line problem?
No, I think it's a Frank Gore problem. Okay. Similar, like, you know, watching Frank Gore last year, it's just I super credit to the guy for his career, especially the running back lasting this long and barely ever missing games. But Frank Gore, like, he's toast at this point.
Who do you think the best?
Watch him go off for 1,000 yards this year.
No, he's on the Jets. Yeah, they must have the oldest running backs. If there is a best handcuff who's available, I guess we'll close with this. Like, what's your stance on handcuffs to begin with? I don't mind holding handcuffs. Although Brad, Jeff, and I did talk about this, and I want to get your thoughts on it too. Because of COVID, I think every league should add 2 roster spots to it.
At least roster spots, IR spots,
something.
Whatever it might be. Yeah, you definitely need, and the roster, the IL spots no, that's baseball. I'm just starting, like, my brain hurts. The IR spots in football, if you want to add 2 and make them only COVID eligible, that's fine. But yes, there has to be something. Given the world, we have to go into this football season and expand rosters one way or another.
And I think that actually makes, because of the pandemic, because of the virus going around, we don't know how it's going to be treated, what the rules are going to be. As it pertains to the fantasy football game, I do think that handcuff running backs have infinitely more value than they do in other years.
I think they do. And to go back to your first question about it with handcuffing, I don't actively do it. I build running back depth. But if it came down to a tie break, you know, now if we're talking about, we're in these drafts and I'm looking at Tony Pollard versus Damian Williams, you know, like, and I have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I'm going to pass on Tony Pollard to get that. If I have, you know, let's say Josh Kelly is officially the backup to Austin Eckler and I have Eckler. Like, that's the thing, is like, if it's a tie break and I'm in this range, I'll go with the handcuff, but I'm not actively going to reach 2 rounds. Like, you go back to the Madison, I'm not going to reach 2 rounds just because I have Dalvin Cook. I'm not going to put, you know, Deion Lewis into round 10 just because I have Saquon Barkley.
So my theory on handcuffs has always been, I rarely handcuff my own players. I tend to handcuff who I think that if the lead running back goes down, that this guy would just basically assume their role. I think Latavius Murray is the best handcuff in football. I really do. Because he's actually better than Alvin Kamara is if Alvin Kamara gets hurt, solely for the purpose that when Kamara is on the high end of the split, he's like an 80% split. But most weeks it's like 68% to Murray's like 22, and then like Zach Line gets a touch or something. But when we've seen it's just Murray there and Kamara's hurt, he gets like 90% of the snaps. Like, he's great.
It goes back to when Mark Ingram was there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what it is.
Yeah,
so,
like if the other guy isn't there, they become so valuable that even if it's only 2 weeks out of the season that the other guy is hurt, and maybe it never happens, but if somehow like you lucked into getting 8 weeks out of Latavius Murray, like he's a top 5 running back if Alvin Kamara doesn't exist. And there's like Madison would be on that plane. If there's no Dalvin Cook, I expect Madison to be good.
I can see Tony Pollard being in it, not because of Tony Pollard himself. I actually think that I would have concerns about Tony Pollard touching the ball 20 times per game, but their running back depth behind him he might just be forced into 20 touches a game.
Yeah, but with Damian Williams, he's a specific handcuff too. I guess Damian Williams plays into this too. He's just going too highly that I wouldn't want to go out and get him. But I think there are a few handcuffs in general that you don't need to have the starter. And if you do have this expanded bench where you can shift guys around because of COVID problems, or maybe even just it's a deeper bench, I think you take a shot on some of these guys with gigantic upside if anything was to happen to the starter, whether you have the starter or not.
Yeah, and I would look for situations, like I'm looking down my list right now, I would look for ones where it's clear. Like A.J. Dillon versus Damian Harris. I would take A.J. Dillon 10 times out of 10 because Aaron Jones goes down, A.J. Dillon is at least Derrick Henry, potentially more. If Sony Michel goes down, Damian Harris might still never touch the ball in the receiving game because it's James White. You go back to the DeAndre Swift one. If you want to say DeAndre Swift's the guy, Kerryon Johnson is the backup handcuff. To your point from before, well, even if Kerry Johnson steps on there, you mentioned it. Kerry Johnson was still splitting touches with other people involved. So I would look for ones where there's more a clear path to being the 20 touch per game guy.
Yeah, and who would those guys be? Madison?
Yeah. Murray, we mentioned.
Paul.
I think A.J. Dillon would be.
Really? You think A.J. Dillon would be? They wouldn't go back to Jamal Williams?
Jamal Williams? Not Jamal. Could we stop with Jamal Williams? They've been trying to make Jamal Williams.
Well, that's the
Jamal
thing. I know that they've gone out and replaced him, but he's still there. If something happened to Aaron Jones, they'd probably try to, let's make it happen again. Come on, Jamal, get in the game.
No, that's why they drafted Dillon. That's why.
Who is Henry's backup?
Darrington Evans.
Yeah, would he?
But he's more of a pass catcher. No, I wouldn't put him in this list because he's more of a pass catcher.
Oh my God, they have Signeris Perry on the team. That guy's been around.
Oh, Sonoris Perry is on that team? Wow.
He's their number 8 running back. Would Reggie Bonif...
You did not make my projections. I projected 399 people, and he did not make the list. By the way, somebody put in because I did 399 people. Guess who? 399 was Tywan Jones, and somebody put in the comments, Tywan Jones' mom is really thankful that you went 399.
That's good. That's a good comment. I like those comments. Is Reggie Bonifon or Miss Scarlet?
Yes.
The backup? Would Bonifon get 20 touches a game if McCaffrey goes down?
No. So that's he's the clear backup, but I think this could be very much like the Mike Davises of the world with the Bears back when Jordan Howard was the guy. He's the backup, but he could falter in his own right, and then they try somebody else, or it just be ugly, and he's just not that good. That's the truth about Bonifon. That's really what it comes down to.
All right, so we have those high-end handcuffs. Darrell Henderson, I guess, would be the other guy.
Yeah, I think Marlon Mack would get some of the touches still, Malcolm Brown. Good grief. There's so many players at this point, they're all starting to mix together name-wise. And that's the other thing. I'm scrolling through these lists, these teams to see. If Todd Gurley goes down, I think it's a mix between all of them. Baltimore Ravens, I mentioned Dobbins, but there's no guarantee that Gus Edwards isn't involved again. I think if Singletary goes down, Zach Moss would see a lot.
Okay. That'll do it. Pat Mayo experience. No, the Titans are signing Derrick Henry to a long-term deal because it sends the right message to the team, Jake.
It sends the right message.
That's what some Titans beat writer tweeted out. Anyway, All In Kid on Twitter. You can check out all of Jake's rankings and projections up at theathletic.com. For me, at ThePME, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. My rankings up on DKNation.com and in the description of this video and podcast, just like the entire kit to everything. Smash the like button. Tell me my shittiest ranking. That's a fun one. And 5-star review on the Pat Mayo Experience Audio Podcast. Give your head a shake if you're not doing that, all right? I'm Pat Mayo. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!